Good afternoon. We're ready for part 2 of our study of Moses. We covered the first 40 years of his life, believe it or not. It doesn't take long because it's only chapter 2 of Exodus, and then not a whole lot is said about his early life. Ironically, you could say a similar thing about the next 40 years of his life. At least the first large portion of the next 40 years of his life, because, and I said I would have a map which is right here, and somewhere something should be happening. Well, it's too hot. Well, I won't argue with that. Okay, I'm just going to leave it right there. I zoomed it out quite a bit compared to what I originally was going to do. That red part is Midian. Okay, so this is what I should have had there before, because when Moses was 40 years old, he ran away to Midian. Now, we don't know exactly where in Egypt the main royal city was at that time, but the chances are it was somewhere up here around Cairo, somewhere up in that northern part. So if that's the case, then Moses would have been here for the first 40 years of his life, and then he ran away all the way, probably over here across the Red Sea. Over here to Midian, and he probably, since he became a shepherd over there, he probably moved around a lot. So in all these places in this wilderness area here, and this is Sinai here, this peninsula here is Sinai. And what we're going to find, and when we come to chapter 3 about Moses, is probably took place somewhere around in this region, it's believed, where he's about to get called by God. So the time references are that he was 40 years old. I lost the verse here. When he ran away, he was 80 years old at the Exodus. So the first 40 years of his life, not a whole lot is said. Then he runs away to Midian, and we don't know exactly how many years have passed. But in chapter 3, Moses' life is about to change even more. We already saw some ways it changed because he killed an Egyptian. He got away with it, he thought. Then he finds out that he didn't really get away with it because one of his Hebrew brothers knew about it. And so he ran away. He gets married in that time. Now he's got a family. He's got a father-in-law and his wife, and he just lives out in Midian now. That's his new life for several years, I guess, until one day he was shepherding out in the wilderness around Midian somewhere, and he comes to Horeb, called the Mountain of God, and suddenly he sees a fire out there in the distance. And he goes there to check it out, and it was a bush. But as he got closer, he saw that the bush, while there was flames, none of the bush was getting consumed by the flames, which is strange, because you can normally, it wouldn't take a bush that long to not be there anymore when it's on fire. But this bush was not being consumed by the flames, and suddenly the angel of Jehovah appeared to him in that fire, and God calls out to him and says, "Moses, Moses." And then he says, "Stop, take off your sandals or your shoes, because this is holy ground." And he tells him, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." And he was terrified, was afraid to look. But God tells him, I've heard the cry, I've seen the affliction of my people, and I've heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and he says, I've come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of the land, that land, to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And as we know, Moses starts to make excuses. First he says, I'm going to send you to Pharaoh. But Moses says, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? You know what's interesting? If you remember last week, we looked at how Moses, when he attacked that Egyptian, when he stepped in and to the Egyptian that was abusing one of his Hebrew brothers, Stephen, centuries later, inspired of the Holy Spirit, says he did that because he thought that his people would have understood that God was delivering them by his hand. Now look how far Moses has come now. He's gone from that to now God actually is literally calling him to do just that, and he says, who am I to do that? Now he already tried to do it. Who knows how long ago? We don't know exactly how long. We know how long it was when he left Egypt, but we don't know. The passing of time isn't really that clear from this point onward up until that time. Now he's saying, basically, I'm not able to do that. Can't do it. Who am I? I'm nobody. God says, I'm going to be with you. Don't worry. Then he said, who am I going to say sent me? God says, I am who I am. So tell him I am has sent you, has sent me to you. Then of course he said, they're not going to believe me. That's kind of his first excuse in chapter 4. Not going to believe me. God says, God turns his staff into a serpent and then back into a staff. Then he says, put your hand in your coat, and then he pulls it out, it's leprous. He puts it back in and pulls it back out, it's clean. God's showing him that he doesn't have anything to worry about because he's in control here. They will believe you. Turns the water to blood. And with every step, Moses is trapped. He's got nowhere to go. He can't get out of this. He still tries, though. The second excuse he makes is, I'm not a very good speaker. What does God say? I'm going to be with your mouth. I'll teach you what you need to say. Now he's really trapped, but he still tried. Excuse number 3 was really not even an excuse. He just said, oh my Lord, please send somebody else, anybody but me. And then God got angry. But what did he do? Moses says, send somebody else. What's God say? You remember? Yep. You got a brother, don't you? I know he can speak good. He can speak well. So I'll send him with you. But you ain't getting out of this. I'm sending him with you. And he's going to speak for you while you speak for me. So finally, Moses surrenders. He's done arguing with God, and he's got to go to Egypt now. So Moses is given the task of going back to Egypt for the first time in decades, at least. Don't really know how much time passed, how long it took, unless I've missed a time reference about how long the plagues took. But he's got to go back now. A wanted man, by the way, remember? Because Pharaoh found out that he killed that Egyptian, and that's when he ran away. But God tells Moses, by the way, I'm sending you there to say these things, but he's not going to listen. I'm going to harden his heart. But this is how it's going to be. This is what's going to happen. And Moses and Aaron go, and they deliver some of these things, these words to Pharaoh, or they're going to. But since we're talking about Moses here, I think there's a couple places worthy of making a little mention here. Some confusing things. One of the most confusing things in the Bible, if that sounds fun, okay? So Moses surrenders. He's going to go back to Egypt. He's on his way to Egypt, okay? And Exodus chapter 4, verse 24. Actually, let's just back up a little bit. Moses takes his wife and his sons, verse 20, had them ride on a donkey, went back to the land of Egypt. And Moses took the staff of God in his hand. Now God tells Moses in verse 21, when you get back to Egypt, make sure that you do the things that I showed you, the miracles that I put in your power. He's still not going to let the people go, but you're going to say to him, thus says Jehovah, Israel is my firstborn, and I say to you, let my son go that he may serve me. If you refuse to let him go, behold, I will kill your firstborn son. So he reiterates the message, like the message that he's supposed to give. Then verse 24, out of nowhere, it says this. At a lodging place on the way, Jehovah met him, that is Moses, and sought to put him to death. You ever noticed that one before? What in the world's going on here? Moses finally went. He tells him, okay, now when you get there, tell him this. And then all of a sudden at a hotel on the road, God's going to put Moses to death. Now, it has been suggested that God afflicted Moses with an illness. But why? Well, look at verse 25. Then Zipporah, who's Zipporah? That's his wife, Mrs. Moses. She took a flint and cut off her son's foreskin and touched Moses' feet with it and said, surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me. It's just getting weirder and weirder, isn't it? What? What is this? Why is this happening? What does this have to do with anything? But look at verse 26. So he let him alone. Well, if you have a New King James Version, you're probably at a little advantage here because you'll probably notice the word he is capitalized. So the he is God, him is Moses. But why did he let Moses alone after his wife came in there like a weirdo and did what she did? Which covenant? Okay, circumcision. There's the key here. Okay, circumcision and the covenant of circumcision is the key. Now Joe asks, how does she know about that? Yeah, she's out there in Midian. How'd she know about it? Well, I mean, it began with Abraham. So, however she knew about it, basically what's happening here is Moses had neglected to circumcise his son Eliezer. And, maybe the better question is, why did Moses not do it? Why had Moses neglected that? And it seems likely that the reason that he didn't do it is because of his wife. She, as was just pointed out, she was from maybe a different upbringing than Moses. Obviously, that's why she's out in Midian. And the only thing that seems to make any sense is she found it repulsive, the whole thing, the practice of circumcision, and she didn't want to do it. But now, and Moses hadn't, put his foot down, so to speak, and done it anyway, as according to God's, covenant or whatever. And so he was going to be punished for that. And she, in a way, kind of saved his life. Because she just does it herself, it seems. And that's why she puts this on Moses and says, "You're a bridegroom of blood to me." And that's what she was talking about, because Moses records there in verse 26. She said that because of the circumcision. So it is very strange, very odd, and confusing in the context of Moses finally goes, he's on his way to Egypt, but then when he's on his way to Egypt, God's going to kill him out of nowhere. And what we learn is that he hadn't circumcised his son. And God was finally going to do something about that. So, Moses learned another lesson, I guess, in that way of not neglecting neglecting God's will. But then they do get to Egypt, or to Israel rather, in Egypt, the Hebrews, and we read that Moses and Aaron went and gathered together all the elders of the people of Israel. Aaron spoke all the words that Jehovah had spoken to Moses and did the signs in the sight of the people. So again, don't miss the detail there that all the things in front of the people was all Aaron. Moses was just the one that was telling Aaron, and Aaron spoke it to the people, and Aaron even did the signs before the people. And the people believed. Well, just to move along here, Pharaoh, what we read is the burdens of the people just keep getting worse and worse and worse, heavier and heavier and heavier. He's laying it on very heavy. Before this time, it seems they had been pretty comfortable up until that Pharaoh arose that didn't know Joseph. They had it pretty comfortably, relatively speaking. They've been well fed. They had leisure time, etc. Now it was bad, and they had come to a point where they were longing to get out of there. They were crying out. That's why they started crying out. We don't need to go through all the details of exactly what went on. Basically, we know the gist. Moses and Aaron kept going before Pharaoh and saying, Jehovah says, let my people go. We want to go a 3 days journey to worship, etc. And Pharaoh says, who's Jehovah? I don't know any Jehovah. Why would I do anything he wants? And he was going to learn. God's going to teach him who he is. And that's where the 10 plagues come in. Moses was intimately a part of all that took place in the plagues on Egypt. We can just leave it at that. We don't have to go through all each plague. What we do about Moses need to understand is he was right there in the mix, right there in the midst of it, being a huge part of it, an instrument of God, even though Aaron was also doing it. But it's Exodus 7:7 that we learn Moses was 80 years old at that time. So what all went on in the 40 years between when he ran away and now that he's back, there's not a whole lot to be said. He just was spending his time, I guess, raising a family and so on. But now he's going to be the instrument that God was going to use to get the people out of Egypt.
Were you looking for the verse that said he was 40?
Yes, that's the one I was looking for earlier.
Acts 7:22.
Okay, so it's good old Stephen again. Stephen's the one that fills that one in. 40 years old when he ran away. Acts 7:22, or Acts. You sure it's 22?
Are you in 7?
Oh, I see 23. Yeah. Is it 23? It's 23 in mine.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. I didn't see it in 23 at first. That's why I was saying that, or I would have just said 23. But I was reading 22 and I didn't see a number in there. Okay, yeah. So it was when he was 40 years old that he went to check on the Hebrews when he killed the Egyptian. So that means, obviously, depending on how much time passed, he was probably roughly 40 when he ran away, depending on how much time passed between when he did it and when Pharaoh found out about it. But now we learn that he's 80 when he's come back. So there's a lot of Moses' life that we know about, most of which is going to be in the next portion. But Moses lived a whole lot of life that we don't know anything about. First 80 years, we know very, very, very little. Joe?
The interesting thing about the paradox of being a human is in the question that Moses asked, who am I to do such a thing?
Yeah.
And God answers that he was basically the great I am. Time goes by quickly in years. But if you ever watch the second of a clock, it goes by very slowly. And you sit there and it's like it's just our very being is empty without the being that fills that void. We're in the image of God, and yet we don't absorb, allow to be in him or him in us. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting thing that humans do.
Mm-hmm.
And then Moses a little later, I am of uncircumcised lips. Now obviously Moses had been circumcised by his mother. But did he mean it's because he did not tell his family what God? I just find that an interesting concept.
Yeah. There are some question marks there as to why Moses did some of the things he did or didn't do some of the things he didn't do.
His identity,
Yeah.
I am of uncircumcised lips.
He was the meekest man on the face of the earth, he says. We'll see that in the next portion of his life. But you think about how difficult it would have been to go back to Egypt, considering he was raised there in the royal place as the grandson of Pharaoh. Then he ran away as a fugitive, and now he's got to come back and look the king in the eye and say, "Let my people go," or let these people go.
It's not the same Pharaoh, though.
Yeah, that's why I corrected that he had to go. He still had to go back, and I guess hope that everybody had forgotten that he killed that guy. But it wouldn't have been easy, I don't think, for anybody, especially to say, "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to let these people go home, where they want to go." And we already know that the Pharaohs, ever since Exodus 1, didn't like these people. They had been shown preferential treatment in a lot of ways in the centuries earlier. Now we don't like these people. We want to have an iron fist over them. Don't want them to get any ideas. Now Moses has got to go in there and say, "Actually, you're going to let them leave. No strings attached. They're to go." And then Pharaoh hardens his heart, and he won't let them go. And then he's just keep one after the other. He's got to say, "Okay, well then this is going to happen." Makes it happen. The magicians are going to try to mimic what he did, and I mean this kept happening over and over and over. Surely was exhausting for him to have to keep doing this. And every time Pharaoh was probably getting angrier, more and more angry, until the very end, whenever God, the Passover was instituted, Pharaoh finally let them go, but then he starts chasing them, and we see Moses grow quite a bit, even in this little time, because you think about At first, he was big and bold. I'm going to save the people. Surely they'll understand that God is delivering them by my hand. Kills that Egyptian. Now he goes back and now he's like cowering in fear. Who am I? I can't do this. I'm not the man for this job. But then he kept having to tell Pharaoh, like, how many people are you going to go? Do you want to go? Well, actually, all of them are coming. Had to tell him to his face, we're all going. And this is how it's going to be. And he's like, okay, well, no, that's not happening. But you can take some, just the men can go or whatever, leave the women and children. But he kept having to step back up and say, no, we're all going. And this is what's happening. Yes?
Through the hardening of Pharaoh's heart, the Egyptian people and Pharaoh learned how powerful the true God is through each one of those plagues.
Mm-hmm.
And the parting of the sea and all. I mean, they wouldn't have seen all that if it hadn't been for Pharaoh's thing. If he said yes at the very beginning, they would have experienced and saw all that.
Yeah. Everybody was learning about God. And even Moses, maybe, to an extent, was learning a lot about God. Because we don't really see any connection. Remember, God hadn't spoken to them for 400 years or so of that Egyptian slavery. Now, Moses, the first time we get any inkling that God spoke to him at all was in the burning bush, all of a sudden. So even Moses was learning about God and his power, especially over gods that aren't even real. So Moses had to rise to the occasion. God delivers them. Now they're running from the Egyptian army. They come to the Red Sea, or the Suez Canal portion of it, which is that and all this. It's believed, by the way, that back then this actually reached the Mediterranean. So on this map, it's pretty much all closed up except a little bitty, well, relatively little. It probably looked big in person, but if this canal here stretched all the way up there, that this is somewhere along in here is where they walked across. So sea parts. Moses directs the people to cross, and they are finally across. And then chapter 15 gives us the song of Moses. So we get to see more of Moses' heart in how he bursts out into this song or writes this song or however it went. I will sing to Jehovah, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider he has thrown into the sea. Jehovah is my strength and my song, and he has become my salvation. This is my God, and I will praise him, my father's God, and I will exalt him. Jehovah is a man of war. Jehovah is his name, and on and on and on, praising God for this great deliverance. So already he's progressing as a man, as a follower of God, and a servant. Good job. So here's some lessons, and this can probably take us back to chapter 3 and 4. God does not accept excuses. Moses learned that. He tried his best. He really tried his best. He gave it a really good shot of trying to get out of this. Sometimes we do that. We make excuses. We may not make them to God, but we make them to ourselves or to other people. I can't do this because this, or I can't do that because of that, or maybe we just skip right to the last one. Just please send somebody else. Did God accept his excuses? Every time he came right back with something, didn't he? They won't believe me. Yeah, they will. Check this out. Throw your staff on the ground. It's a snake. Pick it back up. Staff again. And all these things. They'll believe you, but I can't speak very well. Well, actually, I created the mouth and the tongue, and I'm going to be with your mouth and tell you what to say. So you don't have to worry about what to say. because I'm going to be with you. Send somebody else. Okay, I'll send Aaron, but you're going with him.
You know,
And, yeah.
Pharaoh never believed him. It's been a while since I've read this account, but didn't some of the people start noticing, because all of those 10 plagues had been gods of the Egyptians, and they started noticing, well, he doesn't touch the Israelites. Their God is greater than our God. So even though Pharaoh didn't, I think some of the people was like, okay, if they're taking cover, I'm taking cover too.
Mm-hmm. God said, so that they will know that I make a distinction between Egypt and Israel.
So I think
Powerful statement.
learn.
Can't help but wonder if there were some Egyptians that were moved, not against God, but to God, towards God.
Well, I know that some of them brought their servants and their beasts in the field.
Yeah, some of them believed it. They paid attention. I think those exact words are used. Though the ones, there's a certain way that it's put. Yeah, there it is right there. Whoever feared the word of Jehovah hurried his slaves and his livestock into the houses. But whoever did not pay attention to the word of Jehovah left his slaves and livestock out in the field. And they paid the price for that. So there were some, maybe it was still a selfish thing, but they were at least like, why would we, that's the 7th plague at this point. So it's like, I'm not falling for this again. If they said that's going to happen, it's going to happen. We need to start making preparation for it, and it worked. But again, whoever feared the word of Jehovah versus whoever did not pay attention to it. So, kind of gives you a commentary on what it means to fear the word of Jehovah is to pay attention to it. Yep. Number 2, God has ways of providing for us to overcome our obstacles. Just that's what He did with Moses. I'll be with you. I'll tell you what to say. I'll even send your brother Aaron to do the public speaking. You can do you give my word to Aaron, and then Aaron can give it to Pharaoh if it's that big a deal. Again, that just goes back to number 1. God just doesn't accept our excuses, which is different from a legitimate reason. An excuse sort of implies that it's inherently not based on truth, a reality. Moses, again, remember how Stephen described him as a man who was mighty in word and deed. So he was a good speaker, whether he thought so or wanted to say so or not. And thirdly, as the Lord said, with man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. With man, pretty much everything that happened in Moses' life so far would have been impossible. But with God, look how easy it was. Look how it happened. So even Moses' part was possible because of God. Because God walked him through it, He talked him through it, and he led him through it all. But still, give credit to Moses. He actually did it. He went, he did all the things that he was asked to do. Sure, he resisted at first, but he did give in and submit, and so far he has seen it through. Now, some of the biggest trials of Moses' life are yet to come. So, yeah, they're free. Yeah, they're going on to a land that God's taken them to, but boy, he's about to really go through some stuff. Trials. The burden of being a leader, I guess, in a lot of ways.
Try to be in charge of thousands and thousands
Yeah.
of people that have problems with themselves.
Yep. Poor man, that poor man. And he felt the weight of it. And we'll save that for next week, Lord willing, as we look at the last 40 years. That has, first 40 years, Exodus 2. Second 40 years, Exodus 3 through 15. Third 40 years, Exodus, 16 or 15, I guess, through Deuteronomy 34. So, big, huge. That's a lot. That's, 3.5 books of the Old Testament. Of course, we'll just hit some highlights and the overall part. But don't make the same mistake of Moses as trying to make any excuse you can to keep from doing what God expects you to do. Yes, ma'am?
He may have been the meekest man, and when I look at this, it gives me comfort to know that our great God is that patient with us.
Yeah.
I mean, like this morning, you look in the mirror of His Word, and especially at the table, how far we are from where we should be or need to be. But then it was Moses that didn't get to go to the promised land because he said, look what we did with the water. The one time he wasn't meek.
He let his anger get ahead of him.
Yeah, it's comforting to know he has patience, but it's good to know we can't push him too far.
Yep. Eventually he was angry. Eventually he was angry with Moses. But even then he was patient. Because when he was angry, is when he told Moses, I'll send Aaron with you. You know? And he's patient with Moses through his excuses. He just kept making excuses and God kept being patient. Then finally he got angry and he said, okay, I'm sending Aaron with you. So that was, he got off pretty easy, I'd say, for God's anger being kindled against him. But now he's got to bear this load for the next 40 years of his life and keep going. And we'll see how that goes next week.